Hey everybody, it's the Commodore from the Clan of the Grey Wolf, and you are watching the weekly Wringer series here on clanofthegreywolf.com. Now, you'll notice probably first off when you start watching this video, or even before you click the play button, that I am not using the official Clan of the Grey Wolf flip cam to record this week's version. Instead, I've gone back to the handy webcam, which I shot most of the weekly Ringers with, which is decidedly more low-tech. For several practical reasons I don't even need to get into for this week. But suffice it to say, the webcam will have to be sufficient this week. A lot of things happened this week. A lot of things going on that we could potentially talk about. And so as a result, I have a funny feeling, because of the nature of last week's question and the nature of the question that I want to ask, that this week could be a pretty big video. So without further ado, let's talk about what we're going to do today. I want to really spend some time in depth with some of the contributions from last week, which focused around the work of John Williams. And I think there were so many great contributions and so many great pieces to look at and kind of history to look over, that I spent a little more time in terms of really kind of trying to identify things and spending time really listening. And I think the temptation would have been to turn this video into more of like a listening experience, but I think that's not what the Weekly Ringer is about. And I think that's more of something we would do probably on the Echo screen. And so I'm not going to put music in here after I talk about everything, just to give you an example. I think that probably is just not what the Weekly Ringer is all about. But I spent a lot of time doing a lot of listening, and I hope that you did too, as you were putting in your thoughts about last week's question. So after I go through all of the great contributions of the community, I'm going to give my own thoughts on the matter, as I always do. And then I want to spend some time looking at a question which fits right with the fact that I'm shooting with a decidedly more low-tech webcam, about low-tech devices this week. So let's start off with a few things that happened this week. Obviously, we had some big announcements around Android. They had their kind of answer to the iPhone 4S and iOS 5 with Ice Cream Sandwich, and the Galaxy Nexus from Samsung. There's a lot of news kind of running all around that. A lot of games that have come out recently that I don't have a great handle on. Gears of War, the new Gears of War is one of those games I think is going to be hard to predict in terms of what kind of impact it really has. Rage. The list goes on and on and on. And actually, a game that I've been very excited about all year, if you've been watching the Weekly Ringer, is Heroes of Might and Magic 6. I know it's not called that anymore. It's called something like Might and Magic 6 Heroes or something like that. They just completely... Anyway, you get the point. I'm interested in seeing what that game's all about, because I love Heroes of Might and Magic. It's one of my favorite games of all time, and many of you know that from watching the Weekly Ringer. Anyway, so lots I could have talked about this week, and lots that we probably will talk about in the near future. There's really a lot going on. It happens to be the way that the industry works for video games. The two biggest times a year are kind of the announcements in the summer and the release schedule before Christmas. With technology, it happens to be the same kind of way, except with technology, normally you have the announcements that come right before or right around this time for all the devices and all of the technology that's going to be available for Christmas. So there's a lot going on, a lot we can talk about, and I hope that a lot we'll be able to cover in the near future. And to answer some of the questions that I've had over the last couple of weeks, I don't have anything planned yet for the big one-year Weekly Ringer celebration. In fact, I don't have a celebration at all planned. Maybe we can figure out a way to do that. Maybe I can shoot one live, or I haven't even thought through all the possibilities. I really should, though, because I think there are I'm really very happy and very proud that the Ringer has gone this long consecutively without missing a week for basically, what amounts to a few weeks left to make an entire year. That's fantastic, and I hope that it continues from this point on, and it really continues exclusively with the feedback from you guys. And right from the get-go, the Weekly Ringer was accepted. Right from the get-go, the Weekly Ringer didn't really have to build momentum and steam, even though I didn't know what the heck I was doing, and maybe still don't. But you know, I don't really have anything planned, and I don't anticipate planning anything right now. But I need to think through some of those ideas, and maybe there's some ways that we can get this thing going. I'm also looking at a few other ways that I can improve the Ringer to the point where I could really shoot it anywhere, or at least have kind of a more standardized shot that I use every week, even if I try to maybe green screen it or do something else. Just because I'm a little unhappy with the fact that I kind of end up running around trying to find a place to shoot the Ringer. I don't really like doing that. I'd rather just kind of have a place where I can sit down and do it. But anyway, that's enough of me complaining about the very video that you're now watching, and that I hope you all enjoy wonderfully. But let's get back to last week's question. And it was really about what you guys thought the best score from John Williams was in his lifetime. And if you look back, and I encouraged you all to do this, if you look back in some of the tremendous work of John Williams, and you saw a list of all the movies that he did scoring for, you would find just a tremendous long list of music and films that have had such a tremendous impact on society, on culture, but also just a tremendous long line of films that won awards, of music that won awards, of really, I think that's just tremendously just longer than almost anyone else that's ever been in the film industry. There are a few titans of film on the production side, on the direction side, that might be able to take credit for more than what John Williams has done and contributed, but I think you'd be very hard-pressed to find that, which is, again, why I was very surprised to hear my friend not knowing who John Williams was. That was very, very surprising, and I think many of you expressed that same kind of surprise. So without further ado, let me, before I jump into the community contributions, let me just say hi. We had a couple of new people this week. I wanted to draw some attention to that. We have Slade 3K. Welcome, welcome to you. Let's see. We've got DBZ7148 with a wonderfully touching story. Glad to be a part of the week, my friend. And even if circumstances are tough for you or for anyone else, I've had several of you actually email me that this is a part of your week, and there are things that are going on in your life that you know, maybe keep you down. Hopefully the Weekly Ringer will be something that'll help you smile once or twice during the course of the week. I will keep going as long as there are people like that out there. So welcome to the community, to you as well. And then we had Man with a Harmonica. I thought that was a pretty cool name. I mean, you know, if I carried a harmonica, I would want to be known as the Man with a Harmonica. So welcome to all of you. It's great to have you as a part of the community here in the Weekly Ringer, and I hope that moving forward we will see more of you and many more people to come now that we're closing in on 1 year of the Weekly Ringer. All right. Now, getting into the contributions from last week. What did you guys think the best score for John Williams was? Now, before I jump into the contributions specifically, let's say this. I think there was a little bit of debate about what, you know, the difference between, say, a soundtrack and a score, the difference between a good film song and a good film score, right? And I think that's important to point out, because scoring is very different than choosing the music that's going to be in a film, whether that music even if that music is original. Right? So if I write a song for a movie, let's say I'll do something stupid and silly like Kenny Loggins, right? Writing a song for Caddyshack. He writes "I'm All Right" for Caddyshack, right? And for those of you that don't know Caddyshack, get on that. Anyway, so he writes that song for it. Now, Kenny Loggins didn't do the soundtrack for Caddyshack. Kenny Loggins didn't score Caddyshack, right? He just wrote a song for it, right? Very, very different process. And so when I'm talking about scoring, and many of you highlighted this, so I'm very happy with where the community went. Nobody really drifted too far afield in either direction. But I'm talking about the way that a composer brings music to kind of the incidental nature of what's happening on the screen in order to evoke certain kinds of emotions, in order to set the tone for the scene, in order to really, or even just put an exclamation point on the way that things play out and the drama, right? And there are many people that do this tremendously well, and a lot of them got mentioned, even though this week was about John Williams. But I think it's hard to argue that there are just I would say probably drastically few, if any, people out there, composers, that score as well as John Williams has in his career, and therefore it merits attention. So let's see what you guys came up with. Hoax nominated Superman, which I think is a fantastic nomination. Superman is kind of an amazing and ethereal movie if you watch it now. Now maybe things were different in 1978, which I think I think that's right around the time it came out, but it might actually be late. But Christopher Reeve, Margot Kidder, right? Isn't that who was in that movie? Anyway, the one that goes crazy on Family Guy. Anyway, you know, it looks like an ethereal kind of crazy movie now. It doesn't look like something set in the present day, which is why I think everyone's trying to update Superman now. And indeed, they're actually filming it right now. Another reboot of Superman in the last 5 years. Anyway, so it's just a tremendously involving score. It really underlines some of the work that he did before in some of the other movies here and some of the movies that he did later. It really, I think Superman almost exclusively represents the style of John Williams. It has the kind of wonder and amazement that is signature to his style. You know, it's almost like John Williams is scoring the fact that you're sitting there in the audience watching it in a theater or at home. There is something about his ability to capture those moments, not just the fact that you're watching this film, but that you're watching any film, and that there's a sense of wonder and amazement with it, and depth, and Superman really does, I think, one of the best jobs of that, of any movie that he's scored. A lot of subtlety, a lot of kind of lower and moving nuance that is very subtle to what's happening on the screen, that if it were missing would just be a crime, right? And that is the sign, I think, of a great film composer. So Superman's a great entry, one of my favorites for sure. Zoc mentioned Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I think that I can't argue about this either. Some of the best pieces that John Williams has written for film scoring, in terms of just that amazingly quick, easy to pick up. That's John Williams. That is that's the mystique of John Williams. That's a tune written by John Williams. That is a piece written by John Williams. Comes from the Indiana Jones movies, and I think Raiders of the Lost Ark is probably the best example that I can think of that scoring. There's a lot of again, a lot of nuance there. A lot of the scenes that happen in Raiders of the Lost Ark are really conveyed almost exclusively through the music. Again, I'm sure some of you have seen this. You've seen some of the scenes that they cut the score out of, and it just seems empty. And Raiders of the Lost Ark is one of those. It just doesn't seem really right without all of the scoring going on. Shirao Wolf talked about A New Hope, which might have been elementary, but I'll be honest with you, when I talked about the John Williams question, I wasn't actually thinking about Star Wars, and I know that probably shocks many of you. But if I'm going to talk, first of all, I want to say this: the AFI has determined, and I don't know who the AFI is or how you get in that whole group. I'm not really sure. But anyway, the point is, they've decided in their infinite wisdom that the best film score of all time is Return of the Jedi. Interesting. I think there's a lot of great scoring there, but for my money, Empire Strikes Back has probably the best scoring of the original three. And A New Hope probably comes in second for me. It is, there is nothing in the world like it. And all of you know what I'm talking about. Every single one of you that's ever seen Star Wars, whether you love it or not, there is something